Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my real life range tests, and I'm going to include a full review of this car in this video, as well as I'm trying out a new um, layout, a new setup for my videos. Yes, today we are going to test drive the Ford Mustang Mach-E in its top spec GT version. And this is a car I've been waiting on for quite a while since it was launched, because I was extremely curious about its suspension. But about that later on. For now, let's talk about its design and the changes compared to a normal Mustang Mach-E. So, this is it, presented here in this incredibly bright yellow orangish color. This is the GT version of the Mach-E, and you can tell that this is the high performance version by the grille, which has a black background. On normal models, this grille up over here has the same color as the rest of the car, and by the front bumper. The front bumper has a different design to the sides, where you have the air intakes. As a matter of fact, those are just there to optimize the airflow around the car, and you also have a huge spoiler at the bottom. That's something you will notice instantly, but those more keen-eyed of you will also notice that the car rides a bit lower compared to a normal Mustang Mach-E. So, what kind of specs are we talking about here? This version has 487 horsepower and up to 860 newton meters of torque. It uses a battery inserted in the floor that adds up to 91 kilowatt hours usable capacity, and that should offer you a pretty impressive range of over 500 kilometers. Well, we're gonna put that to the test today and in the following days. Now, the Mach-E GT also comes with an improved braking system, as you would expect on such a car, with bigger rims. These are 20-inch rims with a unique design to GT models, and the one we're testing today is riding on Pirelli P0 tires, which should offer it plenty of grip. Other than that, well, the car does look remotely the same as a normal Mustang Mach-E. We still have the push to open doors over here with these elements that allow you to pull open the door, and in the back as well, just press on the button and the car will pull the door open. It has a stop, as you just saw, so if you don't pull the door open in this position, it won't go back, in order to avoid catching anyone's fingers. Yep. Now, moving to the back, well, you'll notice the sloping roof line, which is also done in black in order to give the car the impression that it's riding lower than it is, but actually the roof is higher than it seems when you first look at the car. And around the back, we still have these taillights that resemble the ones used on the internal combustion Ford Mustang, and they haven't really changed shape that much ever since the original was introduced. But on the GT models, you have the GT badge on the back and the all-wheel drive inscription on the tailgate. Popped trunk. I forgot to check just how big the trunk is, but I will add the capacity over here. It seems like a very decent trunk overall for a car in this segment. There is some storage space available under the floor as well, and that's about it. Now, let's hop inside for a moment, and before we do, I have to tell you that the car does have that combination lock system over here, which allows you to lock it and unlock it using a certain pin number. You can also use a card or the app to open the car, lock it and unlock it, of course. Stepping inside, well, the materials on the doors, the door cards, are pretty good. We have Alcantara over here, leather, and a soft touch material on the top of it, and of course textile finish for the speakers. And this is the interior. Pretty spacious. I mean, let's take a seat. I do fit over here I'm 6 feet tall and about 250 pounds. What I can't really understand is why these seats are so messed up. Something's going on. I don't know if this is like a liquid. It seems like a liquid. Somebody poured something on these seats and they are not easy to clean. But I have to say, this plastic doesn't really feel all that great. It just seems like it's dirty and it doesn't really give off a premium quality feeling. Don't really know what happened over here. But let's step in of the front to talk about the changes compared to a normal Mach-E. And basically the only change you will notice are the seats, which have a more profile contour on the sides and should offer more side support. There's the Ford Performance logo. They do look really nice and they do feel quite great when you sit in them. We also have the GT badging over here and on the armrest. And we also have a panoramic sunroof, which comes as standard on all Mustang GT models and on non-GT versions as well. Other than that, not a lot is changing inside. So we still have this huge screen. It's a 17-inch, if I'm not mistaken, for your infotainment system. We still have this very nice instrument cluster in behind the wheel. And we still have this rotary volume knob that's basically glued onto the screen and feels like it's floating. This is the wireless charging bay. We also have two USB ports over there at the bottom, and of course the gear selector over here. Now let's talk about why we're here. So we're gonna try to test out the real life range of the car. As you can see, we're at 94% battery charge with an estimated range left of 422 kilometers. Not bad at all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reset this trip computer and we're going to see what kind of energy consumption figures we get around town. Then we're going to hop on a series of B-roads and then we're going to hop on the highway to see how the car deals with those scenarios. The outside temperature is 9 degrees, so it's pretty cold out, and we have Pirelli P0 tires, as I already mentioned, which are not exactly efficient tires, but we'll see what kind of results we get. Now I have to mention, of course, that I'm going to use this car in a normal fashion. I'm going to take breaks, I'm going to drive it doing my chores and everything in between to try and get a realistic estimate as to how far you can travel with a single charge. Let's go. Well guys, we just finished the inner city range test and we had a bit of a hiccup because there's a bit of a trick you need to know in order to reset the trip computer on the Ford Mustang Mach-E, and I really didn't know it. So initially I reset the trip computer and I started driving around town, and after about 70 kilometers I noticed that the average energy consumption figure just didn't change. It was still stuck at 28 kilowatt hours. So I realized that the energy consumption figure didn't really reset. It was only the distance and the time. So then I had to do another exercise in this range test, and I had to take do it all over again. So this time we have accurate numbers at least. So let's take a look at what we got. As you can see, I covered 113 kilometers around town in about 4.5 hours, and the average energy consumption is 24 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers covered. The exterior temperature is now 12 degrees Celsius, but it just got over 10 degrees. Most of the time it was around 7 or 8 degrees Celsius. We still have 189 kilometers of range estimated by the car and about 46% of the battery charge left. So what we're gonna do now is hop on a series of B-roads, see what kind of results we get in that scenario, and then we're gonna go on the highway and see what kind of numbers we get over there. Let's go. Okay guys, so we just finished the B-road section of our real life range test. It started raining, but that doesn't matter. Let's take a look at the results. There you have it, 42.2 kilometers covered in about 37 minutes, and the average energy consumption is 17 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers covered. The temperature did drop a bit, and we still have 144 kilometers of range left with 35% of the battery. I hope I'm gonna make it home because we still have the highway section to cover. But at 17 kilowatt hours of electricity per 100 kilometers covered, considering the car has a usable battery capacity of 91 kilowatt hours, you should be looking at over 530 kilometers of range on this type of scenario. So driving with an average speed of about 70 kilometers an hour. That's pretty awesome. It's more than the official estimates. Now, let's hop on the highway and see what kind of results we get there before the monsoon hits us. Okay guys, so we just finished the highway section of our real life range test with the Mustang Mach-E GT. Let's take a look at the results. We covered 45.4 kilometers in about 28 minutes, and the average energy consumption is 28 listed right now, but when we got off the highway it was at 29, but I had to pull over, so it dropped a bit in the meantime. That means you should expect a usable range of about 313 kilometers with a full battery on the Mustang Mach-E GT. That's actually not bad considering I drove the car at 130 kilometers an hour for the full experiment. So yeah, pretty good results. Now stay tuned for the full review of the car. Okay, so now that we covered several kilometers on board of this car, let's talk about what I learned about it. So as I told you, this is the GT version. It's a high performance alternative in the Mach-E range. It has 487 horsepower and 860 Newton meters of torque at its disposal, thanks to two asynchronous electric motors, one on the front axle, one on the rear axle, so it has all-wheel drive. The battery has a 91 kilowatt hour usable capacity, and it should offer a range of up to 490 kilometers, but as I showed you just moments ago, you can go over that or under that depending on the driving scenario. So how is it different compared to a regular Mach-E? Well, first of all, it comes with a Magna-Ride suspension, and that makes all the difference in the world. Back when I tested the original Mach-E, I criticized its suspension most of all because the car felt a bit way too jumpy. The suspension was basically unrefined. So it did soak up the bumps, but it did so in a very unrefined manner. It was kind of noisy and it was jumping all over the place. Not the case with the Magna-Ride setup. What's the Magna-Ride setup? Basically, these are adaptive dampers with iron particles in the fluid inside them, and those particles can be activated by electromagnets, and the viscosity of the fluid gets higher or lower, which in turn makes the suspension stiffer or softer. So that's about it. But it makes a huge difference because this car irons out the bumps in the road a lot better. And even though it's a bit stiffer overall, because this is a performance model, it is a lot more refined than the one on the original Mach-E. And this is a huge improvement, and it is a lot quieter as well over certain bumps. That also makes the car a lot more agile. It handles better, it keeps its weight in check a lot better, and since this car tips the scales at 2.2 tons, you do need that extra control and balance over the axles. And I like the fact that I think it's pretty obvious that the engineers set up the electric motors on this car so that you can oversteer. That's pretty awesome. So basically the rear motor will have a bigger toll in the overall equation of the way this car handles. So mid corner, if you stomp on the go faster pedal, the rear axle will have a tendency to step out, which is pretty awesome. But also if you're careful enough with the go faster pedal, you can adjust just how much oversteer you can induce in your trajectory, and you can adjust just how you exit the corner, because the front axle will chip in as well and will pull you out of the corner if you're careful with the throttle. So pretty awesome. Another thing I noticed is that when you set off from a standstill, you will be able to do four-wheel drive burnouts. Well, not exactly burnouts, but the car will break traction under heavy acceleration from standstill, and that feels pretty awesome, and it looks pretty awesome. And I'm pretty sure that the engineers set up the electric motors specifically this way so that you can do this trick whenever you feel like it and have some fun. And I appreciate that effort done by Ford and Ford Performance. What I can criticize though is the steering, which in whisper mode is okay, it's nicely weighted, but I feel like in untamed mode, because this car has 3 driving modes: whisper, active, and untamed plus, which can only be used on track. But in an untamed mode, I think the steering is a bit too heavy and too artificial. I don't really appreciate that, and especially around town, it feels like a whole workout to operate the car. But yeah, you don't really get feedback in any of the modes. It just gets heavier to operate the steering. Furthermore, the brake pedal also feels a bit too sensitive to my taste. Whenever I press on it, it's just too jumpy. You do have a one pedal driving mode, which should basically reduce the need for you to ever press the brake pedal, because it brings the car to a complete stop. But I don't really like it because somehow it makes the car feel a lot heavier. So I tend to use it without one pedal mode, but without it, the brake feels a bit too eager to bite into the brake discs. I think I'm splitting hairs, but I did really notice that the brake pedal is a bit too touchy for my taste. Maybe you won't feel the same, but you should go ahead and drive such a car before you make up your mind regarding its acquisition. But that's about it. Another thing I can criticize is the fact that on the highway you have a lot of road noise coming into the cabin, so that could have been dealt with a lot better. I think on the facelift we're going to see some more padding added in certain areas to make the interior of this car a lot quieter on the highway at speeds over 62 miles an hour or 100 kilometers an hour. But other than that, I really enjoyed the car. I think it looks great, I think it drives great, and I think it has a more than decent range. If it's worth the money, you tell me. This car has a sticker price of 82,000 euros. I know it's expensive, but you tell me if you would spend the extra money for the GT version, or if you would go for a regular Mustang Mach-E or maybe one of its rivals. Let me know in the comment section below. Until next time, of course, don't forget to feed your passions, don't forget to like, share, and of course subscribe to this channel to keep it alive, and take care of yourself and the ones around you when you're on the road. Ciao.